sure. Come on, Jim. I can't. You're the bird photographer.
Loading the stream here just a second.
Not need snipe. Not need snipe. That's me. Let me know later. Be snipe. Okay. Just figured I'd ask. Yeah.
All right. It is all yours.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you inviting me to come talk to the group tonight. Sorry I'm not there in person, but I guess if there was one good thing that came out of COVID was doing meetings like this where we could meet virtually and still get our information out there and see some new faces. I know that folks from my program have talked with y'all in the past. I don't think I have, though. I was trying to remember if I've talked to your group or not. I have talked to a couple of groups in Louisiana. But I know one of my assistants gave you a presentation a couple years ago. But anyways, I'm really happy to talk to you guys tonight. I know the topic that I'm going to be discussing is not maybe the most wonderful topic on the planet, but it is the reality of what our agency is facing right now. So I'll delve into it. I'm going to do a share screen here and hopefully you guys will be able to see my presentation. Okay. Give me a yes if you guys can hear, because I can't see anything now.
Yes, we can.
All right, great. So I want to start out by saying I don't know if everybody fully realizes how important hatcheries are to Arkansas and trout fishing in general. So trout production really is a big partnership for us. And we rely on multiple different sources for what we stock around the state. So we have 2 game and fish, Arkansas game and fish facilities. The primary one being our hatchery up at Spring River in Mammoth Spring. And then we also have a net pen facility on Lake Ouachita where we take fish during the winter months and use those to stock all those Southwest Arkansas fisheries that you guys know and love fishing at. But we rely very heavily on 3 federal trout hatcheries in the state, one at Norfork, the one at Greer's Ferry, and then one in Mammoth Spring that helps us stock the Upper Spring River. So all those fisheries are really important. And this is how important. So if you look at what each of these hatcheries contributes from a percentage standpoint to just a general number of fish we stock in Arkansas each year, and this would be under normal circumstances, the federal hatcheries at Norfork and Greer's Ferry especially are providing over 50% of the trout that we stock in Arkansas. And then a big percentage of those also comes from our Spring River hatchery, the Jim Hinkle Spring River State Fish Hatchery. So we rely really, really heavily on our federal hatcheries. And I don't think people understand that. And this figure is a little bit misleading in the fact that Norfork, Greer's Ferry, Mammoth actually stock the fish, but we also, at our hatcheries, get all of our fish and eggs from federal hatcheries. So even though we stock them, we 100% rely upon the federal hatcheries, whether it's these ones or federal hatcheries from other states. So we've had a heck of a year with trout and Mother Nature in Arkansas this year. So the reason that we're in the current situation is a product of 2 different bad events. The first of which was a big flood that hit our Spring River hatchery, our facility, back in April. We had a record flood. This aerial view just kind of shows just how much damage there was. It washed out the bridge to the hatchery. It completely overtopped every single bit of the facility. You can kind of see a building towards the top right with the green roof. That's the office. The water was about 3 foot into that office building. Completely messed up everything inside, flowed over the top of all those round tanks down through the middle, the silos, and just caused a lot of damage to our facility. And in the same flood, also completely wiped out all of the trout we had at the Mammoth Spring National Hatchery a few miles upstream. They had flood water coming in, and they just opened up their gates and let all their fish go. But normally our facility would carry about 750,000 fish on site, and we were down to about 150,000 after the flood. When that happened, Norfork Hatchery thankfully was still in full production. So we were able to shift around fish from a couple of our other fisheries, Beaver tailwater in Northwest Arkansas, Norfork tailwater, of course, many of you know that one, in North Central Arkansas. And so we were able to make up some of the shortages that really from this event only affected the White River in North Central Arkansas. But after that flood, we were only stocking about 50% from our hatchery for the remainder of the year. We're currently, as of right now, still only stocking at a 50% rate from our hatchery. But we do expect that our hatchery is going to be back to full production by April, which is good news because we then were faced with the current situation with our Norfork Federal Hatchery. So I want to set this up, and it's hard to do. I'm not there in person to point things out. But on the left-hand side, you can see I have marked. If you pretend that this is a lake, this square is a lake, you have the lake surface at 0. And then as you go deeper in the lake, so minus 20 feet, minus 40 feet, that's as you're going deeper in the lake. The little blue line in the top left corner of your screen shows dissolved oxygen. And it shows it decreasing from the surface as you go deeper in the lake. And as you can see, it takes a sharp turn towards the left to, if you look along the bottom scale, 0, that's dissolved oxygen. So this was the profile of the lake in December or in September, that we had 0 oxygen once you got to about 40 feet deep in the lake. And the red line on the right-hand side shows water temperature in the lake, which shows that as you go deeper in the water, it gets colder, which is typical of the lakes in Southeast United States, that in the summer months you have warm surface layers, and in the bottom you have cold water. But the problem with what we had this fall at Norfork Hatchery, this shows it a little bit better. You see 3 dashed lines that go about 50 feet, 90 feet, and 130 feet deep in the lake. And I've circled those 3 problem areas because those are the hatchery intakes where the hatchery at Norfork draws its water from, and they can adjust where they take water in from the lake. But they're pulling water from, on the left-hand side, depths that have no oxygen, and on the right-hand side, depths that have really warm water temperatures. We're talking anywhere from 65 to 70 degrees, which for raising trout in a crowded space like a raceway is a really bad combination. So hopefully that makes sense without me there pointing on the screen. But those were 2 of the biggest issues. So starting in probably mid-September, we start having really bad oxygen issues in the lake, warm water temperature in the hatchery. A low oxygen environment in the lake leads to problems with hydrogen sulfide, as well as heavy metals like iron and manganese. And all of these things alone in high enough levels are toxic for fish. But there was just this magical combination of all these things happening at the same time that resulted in huge losses at the hatchery. So Normally, Norfork Hatchery carries anywhere from 3 to 3.5 million fish on their facility, and they're currently sitting at about 8% of what they would normally have, is how many fish they lost between last fall and this fall due to these poor fall conditions. Which helps highlight just how dire this situation is. They have 96 raceways, the concrete holding tanks. If you guys have ever been to that facility, only 5 of those currently have fish in them, is how many fish that they have lost. In the hatch house where they raise the eggs and the little baby trout and fry, they do have fish in there, but a couple 100,000. So we're talking a fraction of fish remaining on the facility compared to what they normally have. So, in pointing out, this is a different figure a little bit from what I showed you earlier, but this shows the percent of fish stocked in most of the major fisheries in the state where we stock trout and which facilities stock those fisheries. So you see Bull Shoals tailwater, so the White River it's almost a 50-50 from our facility and from Norfork. Norfork tailwater and Beaver tailwater both rely 100% on stocking from Norfork Hatchery. And so those solid blue bars. And then the other hatcheries are kind of a mix and match of who stocks and who doesn't. But so to point out the major problem we're facing right now, and this doesn't even account for the fact that these green bars should be cut in half by 50%. But if you take out Norfork and what it contributes with the fact that it cannot stock any fish right now, it's a really dire circumstance for the fisheries up here in North Arkansas. And of course, they're our most heavily pressured fisheries in the state, and generate, I guess, the biggest economic impact for the state as well. So this is a major issue for us as an agency. And when I presented all this to our commissioners, when it first started back in October, well, when I went to present and ask for temporary regulations, I told them my worst nightmare as a trout biologist is having one of my major trout facilities unable to stock, which I almost had with that flood back in April. Thankfully, we were able to keep it at only a 50% cut. But then I found out my worst nightmare can be worse when I completely lose the other major producer of trout in the state. So it's just an unprecedented situation to have 2 major facilities down in the same year. And it's not as simple as, there's lots of stuff, lots of people that say, why can't you just go buy some trout from somewhere and, replace the ones you lost? Well, it's not a quick process to replace fish. I mean, it's not. Norfork Hatchery is the biggest federal trout hatchery in the country. And, we're looking to replace 400,000 to 500,000 trout. It's not as simple as going out to a little private producer somewhere and asking them to provide us with 400,000 trout. They couldn't even dream of raising that many fish to supply and replace what Norfork's lost. And our hatchery has spent now going on probably 7 months since the flood, still trying to replace some of the fish that they lost in the different sizes. And it takes a while, depending on what size of fish that they can bring in. You're looking at anywhere from bringing in eggs, which is 20 to 22 months from an egg to when a fish is stocked as an 11 to 12-inch fish. So if they can't bring fish in those intermediate sizes, like 3 inches or 6 inches or 8 inches, it could take a while. And what we don't know is how quickly they're going to be able to replace the fish that they've lost and what sizes they'll be able to get to bring into the hatchery. But what we do know right now is we're not expecting them to be able to stock again with their own fish until at least next summer. So 6 to 8 months from now. So obviously, as trout biologists, we're extremely concerned without Norfork. Obviously, the major concern is how it's going to affect our anglers in the state. We looked at a lot of different data, and thankfully, we are pretty data rich as far as doing angler surveys and population surveys. So we get a really good idea of effort on our fisheries, or how many hours people spend fishing, catch rates, harvest rates of fish. So we have a good idea of stuff. And so we looked at catch and harvest at different fisheries. This angler harvest, 35% of parties harvest fish, is based on a creel survey of the White River. That, not every single party that goes out fishing keeps fish. But there are a lot of people that do keep fish. And in some of the seasons where people are out fishing, because there are people that harvest fish, they could potentially harvest really high percentages of what we stock. I'm talking in the winter months when we typically don't stock as much, which this crisis, if a crisis could hit like this, it is good that it's hitting this time of year when we're going into kind of what is the slow time of year for fishing. But anglers could potentially harvest a really high percent. And, on some of these fisheries up here, they could harvest 70 to 80% of what we stock in the winter months, which translates to people go out fish and they don't catch anything. And the other concern that we have with this whole thing is that, if you don't have all the normal catchable size 11 and 12-inch rainbows out there, then people could potentially start putting a lot of pressure on the quality size fish that we have up here in North Arkansas. Whereas normally they would let those quality fish go in favor of harvesting a stalker, they might start harvesting our quality fish. And that's not a quick recovery. And then obviously, we're concerned if this translates to people come and they have a bad time and they don't catch anything, then it could have lasting economic impacts. And really that's all unknown, but it's definitely something that we were concerned about when all of this hit. So what we decided to do is to go in and meet with our commissioners and present them with multiple different options on what they could potentially do to help protect the fishery while we're having this reduced stocking situation. So obviously we looked at, should we do catch and release in some areas or all the fisheries? Or, should we have reduced daily limits that, normally the statewide daily limit is 5 fish per day. So do we go in and make it 3 fish per day or 2 fish per day? So we looked at different combinations of possibly doing that. Also looking at changes to length limits temporarily. And honestly, one of the options that we discussed is, well, we could do nothing and just kind of see how this plays out. But that really is an option, but it was a non-option. It was not anything that we wanted to do. We knew we had to do something and go in and temporarily protect these fisheries. So October 15th, I presented this whole scenario to our commission, and what they decided to do was to make Bull Shoals tailwater upper 45 miles. Normally we stock trout in 90 miles of the Bull Shoals tailwater and the entirety of Norfork tailwater. Both of those became catch and release only for all trout species. We also made the lower 45 miles of the White River a reduced daily limit to 2 fish per day. We did not put any special length limits or anything. The one trout over 14 applies year round. So the only change down there was that we reduced the daily limit from 5 to 2 fish per day. And then went in on the Greers Ferry and Beaver tailwaters and reduce the daily limit to 2 fish per day. But on those fisheries, we implemented maximum length limits of 14 inches. So nobody can harvest any trout over 14 inches on those 2 fisheries right now. And we knew that we needed to, with if you think back to that figure I showed you where Norfork completely stocks Beaver tailwater and Norfork tailwater, those are really affected by this reduced stocking. So we know we needed to do very protective regulations on the fisheries that are most significantly affected. And we reduced daily limit at the Greers Ferry tailwater, knowing that we were going to, cut that fishery as well to help supply fish to the other fisheries. So what that looks like is, again, here's another way of looking at it. So this is what we came up with a plan for early 2026. And I'm talking only January through May, because honestly, we don't know yet fully what we're going to have from Norfork until we get into the spring and they start looking at what they're going to lose or what they're going to be able to get to replace what they've lost. So this is, each of these bars shows the number of fish that we typically stock in each of these fisheries. If you look over to the far right-hand side, you'll see a bar that says other. That's where I've lumped together the Washita River tailwaters, so Blakely, Carpenter, Remmel, Albert Pike, and our seasonal and family and community fishing lakes are all lumped in that other category. But after making all the adjustments and knowing what we for sure are going to have, this is what it looks like with Norfork not stocking any of their fish. Our hatchery still operating at 50% until April. And then, of course, the other 3 hatcheries, thankfully, being unaffected. We're looking at cuts of 40 to 50% across the White River, Norfork tailwater, Beaver tailwater. And then we've made 50% cuts at Narrows and Albert Pike. The Little Red and Spring River, we're cutting 25% from each of those to help supply these other fisheries. But the biggest cut, and I don't know if you guys might boo me off the screen or not, but the biggest cuts that we're going to have this winter are going to be to Blakely, Carpenter, and Remmel. And it really came down to prioritizing the fisheries that have the higher number of anglers and the higher number of people. And so that's where big cuts came from that are going to help us cover the losses at these fisheries in North Arkansas for the next 6 months. So what we're doing next is obviously Norfork Hatchery is going to be looking for replacement eggs and fish. And again, it's going to take them a while to kind of work out that plan when they think they're going to be able to get started stocking again. The fish that we move from Southwest Arkansas are going to be transferred to Norfork Hatchery, and they're going to stock them themselves, but they will not be stocking any of their own fish until I don't know when. Hopefully they can start stocking some of their own fish again by the summer, at some point during the summer. And these emergency regulations that we put into place will expire after 120 days. So sometime in mid-February, we will have to go back into our commission again and ask them to either lighten the restrictions or to continue them for another 120 days. And so we'll just see how things play out over the next couple of months. And we are going to keep working with Fish and Wildlife Service closely. We've already had a couple meetings with them to try to identify possible solutions. Now, going into the lake, one of the things that's kicked around as an idea to fix this problem is going in and doing a big fix on Norfork Lake where you rig up some sort of a system like a 4-bay oxygen diffuser. So basically running lines into the lakeside and pumping liquid oxygen in, which would help with these issues in the fall. But a fix like that is a multi-million-dollar congressionally authorized project that isn't a quick fix. But we think there's smaller things we can do on the hatchery that might help get more aerators on the hatchery, do more regular monitoring to start seeing when things are starting to take a turn in the fall. But there's a lot of things that we think we can work with them on to at least help in the short term avoid this big of an issue in the future. And then, of course, when we get a better idea of what Norfork's replacement scenario is, then we could begin to start planning for the June to 26 stocking numbers. But for those who are curious, you know, a lot of people have asked, are we going to be stocking narrows and Albert Pike this year? The answer is yes, just at that 50% rate. And we feel like that's okay because we just finished up a creel survey down there a couple years ago, and the harvest rates were really pretty low on narrows and Albert Pike. Like, very few people were harvesting fish. It was only about 15 to 20%. So we didn't feel like we needed to have any restrictive regulations, and we could get away with this reduced stocking number. Of course, we'll keep an eye on that and see what folks are saying. But we actually stocked Narrows tailwater today, and we stocked Albert Pike last Thursday. So if you're up here around Thanksgiving, then both of them should be pretty good fishing. But anyways, that's what I've got for you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing so I can see people's faces, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about what's going on up here. It's not fun by any means, but.
All right. Christy, the problem at Norfolk, has that ever happened before?
Yeah, so they have this issue with water quality at Norfork Hatchery every single fall. It's just the product of the fact that these southeastern reservoirs do stratify in the two different layers where they have the warm water on top and the cold water on the bottom. I think it was extra this year because of the flood water that came in back in April. So that same flood water that flooded our hatchery back in April is the same flood water that filled up Norfork Lake. And so in a floodwater year, you get extra organic material, you know, lots of mud and debris that fills into the bottom of the lake, and then it decomposes and uses up all the oxygen. And so it's extra bad in flood years. You know, and every fall, the hatchery loses thousands of fish. But this year, they literally went from a period where they were losing 1,000 fish a day to overnight losing 40 to 50,000 fish a day for a couple weeks straight. Like, it was really, really bad. But it does, to some extent, they do have issues with water quality every single year.
All right, will you explain the catch pens? That's it. I don't understand how that works.
The net pen,
At the catch pen.
the ones that we have on Lake Washita.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically what they have is a facility where they put out a floating platform with like a big net that floats below it. And so and this will happen this year, the week after Thanksgiving, Greer's Ferry Hatchery raises fish to a 9-inch size, and then typically they'll take all of the fish for Southwest Arkansas to the floating pens and put those fish in the pens in the lake while it's cold enough. And then that facility pulls fish out of the pens and uses it to stock in Southwest Arkansas all winter long.
All right.
So every winter, that's where Spring River Hatchery does stock narrows tailwater, but the net pen supplies half of the fish for Narrows, all of the fish for Washita River, all the Albert Pike fish, as well as typically the family and community ponds in southwest Arkansas, down in Texarkana and Hope and Hot Springs area. But that's another big part of Game and Fish that took a hit with all this is these reductions in stocking. Normally we would stock during the winter months from November through February about 50,000 trout around the state in family and community urban ponds. And this winter we've cut it down to 13,000 total, and they're only getting fish one time in December, and then they're not going to get any trout the rest of the winter.
Christy, back to the Norfork situation. I noticed on your chart, there were 3 levels from which they draw water out of the lake. Obviously, the upper level has the most oxygen, but the water's also warm.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't draw from multiple layers at once to kind of cook the best water they can, for lack of a better word, or?
Yeah, they do. They can pull from multiple levels, but they can't 100% pull from one level or the other. But again, if you 100% pull from that bottom level, you have no oxygen at all.
Yeah.
And if you 100% pull from the top level, the water temperature is over 70 degrees, which is going to kill trout just on its own. So they're trying to blend, a little bit of cold with the warm. And really the warm water is probably the warm water, and the heavy metals and the hydrogen sulfide are more of an issue for Norfork than the oxygen was. Because by the time it gets in the hatchery and it filters through all their stuff and aerators and little diffusers, the oxygen levels weren't that bad. But these warm temperatures and all those other things going on were just, those conditions alone cause parasites to thrive. And so it was like a snowball effect of one bad thing after another. And then all these things all acting together. And it's just, they can pull from multi-levels, but they're pulling, it's pick your bad
Right. Yeah.
when you get to that situation.
Christy, going back to the stocking at the Narrows, 50% decrease there. So that's how many fish? That's what, 25,000 or so?
Yeah, I have to think. Yeah, normally stocking is probably 50 to 55,000. So you're looking at 25 to 30,000 total for the year. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
That number of harvest percentage at the Narrows, 15%, that seems mighty low to me. I mean, I fish there a lot, and I see a lot of fish taken out, harvested at Narrows, which, that's a big concern to me. But
yeah, could have been the nature of the survey. We randomly select the days that we go out and do the surveys and talk to anglers while they're fishing. So I don't know if it was a product of catching more fly catch and release oriented folks out there. And the majority of people that we see harvesting fish are up there at Riverside Park, sitting on the wall. Other than that, we might get a few at River Ridge or Hines Bluff, but for the majority of what we talk to is people using artificial tackle only.
I got surveyed
Mm-hmm.
at River Ridge, and I was glad to get surveyed. Yeah, it's great. Only took 5-10 minutes, and the guy was super helpful.
He better have been.
Oh, he was terrific. He was terrific. I was fishing with my son, and we generally don't keep any at all. We just go for the fun of it. And,
Yeah, it was interesting when we saw those Creel survey results, and Glenn or Bill, I'm happy to send you guys the report that we did, and you could pass it on to everybody by email. But the trend had changed a lot. So the last time we did the survey was back in 2013-14, and the percent of fish harvested was higher then, more in the 30-35% range. But this survey, we saw less bait anglers overall and a lower percent harvest. So it had changed a bit from what we saw in the previous survey.
Interesting.
this is off the subject a bit, but the Narrows and that stretch is our home water for this club. And we know that they were working on that dam. Do you have any update on that you can share with us? Do you know anything about it?
No, honestly, I haven't gotten any sort of an update yet this year about whether they're done with their work. We have a district fisheries biologist down in that area, and he was keeping up with it a little bit more than I was, but it definitely didn't sound like it was the best fishing conditions for the majority of the year last year, but sounded like I talked to a gentleman up there. Some of you may know Mike Ingram. He made it sound like they've resolved some of those issues and they're generating more regularly now instead of this crazy high release. And I know there were concerns with storm system coming in last week, filling up the lake again and having them blast water, but I don't know if that ever materialized. But sorry, I don't have more of an update than that for you.
It's okay. It was a little bit of a left field question anyway. I just
Yeah,
we're here. I figured I'd ask.
sure. Okay, guys. Well, I appreciate you having me tonight. I have a very open door policy, so if you ever have any questions or want to email me, look me up, send me questions. I'm always happy to get reports from Southwest Arkansas. And sorry this was not the best topic on what's going on right now, but I am happy to get the word out there more. But my message is the fishing's still good. People are still catching fish up here. We were out doing surveys last week on the White River, and we got a ton of fish. We'd been a month or a little over with no harvest of the fishery, but the numbers were about the same as what we saw last year. And even with the reduced numbers that are going in, we're still seeing lots of fish. And this didn't have any effect on the fish in the river. So we still have really good quality rainbows out there. We still have good browns. Didn't affect any of those fish at all. So anybody think about canceling trip, don't do it. Things will be fine and we're going to recover, and Arkansas fishing is still going to be great. So
Christy, let me ask you one final question before we let you go. You mentioned the White River and the browns and rainbows. What about can you tell us a little bit about the brookies and cuts that are there? Like where they can't come from, what's the stocking situation on them? Is it natural reproduction of stocking those, or what's going on with those?
No, so both of those are stocked. Also, several of the last 5 or 6 years, we've stocked tiger trout, which are the hybrid between brook trout and brown trout. Brook trout are produced by Goose Ferry Hatchery. Cutthroat trout are produced by Norfork Hatchery. And honestly, when all this stuff was going on at Norfork Hatchery, they normally raise their cutthroat trout up to a 9-inch size. Well, all of those species get raised to about a 9-inch size before they get stocked. The cutthroat trout were only 6 or 7 inches, and it was either stock them or they die. And I said, stock them, get them out of there. I'd rather them go in smaller than not go in at all. So none of those. We haven't documented natural reproduction of brook trout or cutthroat up here. We partnered with Trout Unlimited to do Bonneville cutthroat trout eggs 5 or 6 years ago, where they went in using egg boxes and actually dug artificial redds and put egg boxes in. And so kind of established a a population, very small population of Bonnevilles, but we still have not seen that those have naturally reproduced on their own yet. And then a couple years ago, the egg situation didn't work out with Bonnevilles, so they stocked them at a 2-inch size. They hatched them in the hatchery and stocked them at 2 inches big. And so people are catching a few of those now, but Norfork also raises all the brown trout that we stock in Norfork and Bull Shoals. But like I said, they also had to dump some of the browns early because water quality was bad. And so we really don't know how quickly are they going to recover those other species. We should be getting some brooks out there from Greer's Ferry at some point in 2026 from the Greer's Ferry hatchery.
Yeah, thanks. I was just curious, as I've caught the Bonnevilles out of Norfolk a couple of years ago, and just kind of curious about where they came from and all.
So I have one other point to clarify, if I may.
Sure.
On the frequency of stocking on the Narrows tailwater, is it going to be the same frequency, just fewer fish? I mean, we'll still get fish through April.
Yeah, so we were gonna get, I'm trying to think what the schedule looked like. So you got fish October, November, and you'll get them again in December. And then, yes, we have fish going in all the way through April. Normally, we have fish on the schedule to go all the way into May, but usually by April, the water temperatures are creeping up such that they go ahead and just stock the May fish in April. But this year, the May fish did get cut, but you should get fish all the way through April.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Christy, a couple of years ago, I got emails. I'm on the Arkansas Game and Fish email list, and I'd get an email of that they had stock the day before, something like that. Is there any way that to put out when the stocking occurs?
Well, yeah. So that's one thing that I really want to do, and I think that we should do. Now they do the family and community program like regularly updates our website on when ponds were stocked. Now we don't ever advertise when we're going to stock because things change as far as, you know, a truck breaks down or it's bad weather, and so they have to push it by a day. And if you said they were going to be there at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday and they don't show up till Wednesday at 11 o'clock, people get mad. But I don't think it's unreasonable that we work as an agency to have a, you know, at least within a week after stocking, have it posted on the website. And that's something that I have planned, and we just haven't got around to it yet. But
I appreciate that effort. Cause usually as soon as I find out there's fish, I gas up. Well, usually I'm gassed up and ready.
well, you need to gas up on the way home and head to the Narrows because it got stocked today. So
There you go, Carlton.
You'll be gone tomorrow.
Thanksgiving came at the wrong time.
Tonight, Christy.
yeah, okay. Oh, gotcha. Just driving straight from the meeting to Narrows. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for having me.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
Right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good presentation.
Mm-hmm. All right, Kat, you have anything before we adjourn for the evening? We have Christmas party, what, in a week and almost 2 weeks from tonight. Yeah, 2 weeks.
Yes, December 8th.
And we have, did you send out something on donations for door prizes and tying flies and all that, I think, already? Have y'all got anything on that?
I don't think so.
No? I'm seeing heads shaking. I'm seeing heads shaking, no.
I saw some.
But I saw something and like your MailChimp email on it, but Maybe we need to do that again. Yeah, maybe need to mention that again. But I have I have most of the mixed bag prizes ordered, so that should be good again this year. A lot of good prizes for the mixed bag, but, yes. All right. Anything else, Catch? Anybody else? I hear some background on somebody. I don't know.
No, but I think that's.
Yeah. All right. Anything, Catch? I'm not hearing you.
Any fishing reports?
Fishing reports. I caught 6 goo and 2 white perch today, but it's not what I was after. But
Rich and Doug and I went to the Lower Mountain Fork at Oklahoma last week and caught a few fish. Fishing's good. Catching is real hard there. Is when you, but I'm kind of learning a little bit about that.
So you're ready to host a trip to the Lower Mountain Fork sometime this spring? You got a good place to stay there?
Yeah.
I like fishing there. I don't mind the tough fishing. It's as long as it's not too tough. But you can always put a salmon egg or something on there and improve your chances a little bit.
It's a lot more fun to catch a 10-inch fish in fast current than it is in a still water.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
And I did catch an 18-inch bow that was just a chunk.
Ooh.
So,
I went to Coteal today, catch it. I did catch 1 bass out there on a popper. It was nice. I went to Caney Creek Lake on Friday and tossed around all day and only got 2 small ones. A couple days before that, I went to Toledo Bend. Same thing. I did better there. I caught about 5. All bass, all on poppers.
Nice. Oh, I went to Grand Isle last week for a couple of days and saw a couple of good schools of reds up in a little shallow pond and did everything wrong and spooked both of the schools. So wound up catching 3 good flounder. Of course, flounder season's closed, and 3 reds that were 16, just under slot, 15, 16 inches. Plus a bunch of small white trout, a whole bunch of them.
all right, Robert, did you do any fishing when you got up there?
You're on mute, Robert.
Yeah, we didn't fish today. It's raining, lightning all evening here. But they did stock. I did see the stocking truck, and they're generating now. They're running for about 3 hours this evening, and no generation all day tomorrow. So Evan's gonna get his first trout tomorrow.
There you go.
All right, does he have little waders?
Oh yeah. Well, I'll get some pictures for the Christmas party.
Oh yeah, do that. Get some pictures. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I may have heard somebody caught 102 white perch, sockeye, crappie at Kincaid Lake. And they got a ticket for it.
From the bank, I understand.
I know where it is. Do you know where Valentine Road, the highway, Valentine Road crosses the creek over there?
Yeah, I was baptized in
In
Valentine
Lake.
Creek right there.
Yeah, that spot right there. I've been there and I've caught, 50 sockeye about 5-6 inches long out there.
Yeah, the picture on Facebook, they look pretty small.
Yeah. Well, the picture on Facebook was just a generic one, but the one what they actually caught was all 5 and 6 inches fish. And that's the place to catch them. You want to catch a lot of small little crappie. It's under those bridges out there. You just go down to the bank You park on the side of the road, you go down there and you fish. And sometimes there's some nice crappie in there, but not that time. And unfortunately, it won't be because he's taken out all those fish. Oh, boy.
As you're going down Valentine Lake Road, like you're gonna go to the rec area, the campground, you go down and do a little toss up.
That's a creek that flows.
Valentine Creek, that flows into that end from Valentine Lake, out of Valentine Lake and flows down into the Kincaid.
Gotcha.
And when they drew it down, you could actually still see the creek was the only thing that had water when they drew it down a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, anything else, y'all, before we end the Zoom?
Mixed bag standings.
Mixed bag standings, I do not have a report. I'll have one for the Christmas party.
There you go.
So. All right. Kat, you want to adjourn or this is it? Good?
Yes, I'll adjourn the meeting for you.
All right. All right. Thank you, Kat. All right.
Right?
Yes.
Everybody have a great